Patriotic comrades, Procurement 101 isn't about buying supplies. It's about getting away with it. At UHWI, wards are collapsing while contractors get paid and millions vanish. This isn't incompetence, it's a system. Who profits when hospitals are kept on life support?
Hi, I'm Dr. Alfred Dawes, and this is UC on Life Support. In our first two episodes, we outlined the history and regional significance of the UHWI, the infrastructure and supplies crisis, and the staffing concerns. Today, we connect these failures to the system that enables them: procurement. This is about how public money disappears, how basic needs go unmet while millions are spent elsewhere. Long before the Auditor General's report landed in Parliament, the staff at the UHWI were asking the same questions we are asking now. In one letter, consultants formally requested further information regarding what the procurement process entails. They wanted to know who are the persons responsible for generating the needs list that guide the procurement process. Do consultants and frontline staff have any say in what items are required and ordered? Are the procurement documents available as public records, past and present? These are not technical questions. These are governance issues. If the people treating patients don't know who decide what the hospital buys, how then can procurement reflect clinical priorities? The answer, as we know now, is that it simply doesn't. The consultants documented that despite the lack of basic equipment and supplies, there seems to be a strong motivation by the hospital management to procure items that have not been requested by senior medical staff. They wrote plainly, "This raises questions regarding financial and accounting practices of the hospital." The Auditor General confirmed every single concern that the staff had raised. And even worse, the UHWI failed to provide procurement documentation for 51 contracts valued at $521 million. No requisitions, no tender documents, no bid submissions, no evaluation reports, nothing. The Auditor General stated that this served to corrupt the process engaged to procure goods, services, and works. But the problems went deeper. The UHWI routinely engaged in what the Auditor General called retrospective procurement, inviting suppliers to bid for goods and services after they had already been delivered and the works already completed. The bid invitations implied that a legitimate competitive process had taken place when in fact the outcome was already predetermined. If this sounds familiar, it is due to the fact that another Ministry of Health and Wellness scandal recently featured payment for services after the fact but were labeled as reimbursements. Examples of this included the purchase of 41 laptops and renovations to multiple facilities: the staff clinic, the occupational building, doctor's quarters, daycare nursery, wards 17 to 20, and the Wi-Fi building, valued at a whopping $69.2 million, where the UHWI only began inviting bids after the goods were delivered and the works completed. The hospital also spent $186,600 on consultants supposedly to develop strategic and operational reviews. Yet, when the auditors asked for the approved strategic plans done by those consultants, they could not be provided. Money paid out and nothing to show for it. Absolutely nothing.
Patriotic comrades, let's be clear. This isn't a procurement mistake. This is a procurement design. When rules consistently reward failure, that's not bureaucracy breaking down. That's accountability being engineered out. Jamaica needs to understand this clearly. Procurement in Jamaica is governed by law, cabinet oversight, and ministerial authority. priority. When it goes wrong this consistently, it's not confusion, it's permission. Now, on the matter of the Public Procurement Act, PPA, under Jamaica's Public Procurement Act, value for money, transparency, and fairness aren't optional. They're legal requirements. So when contracts are repeatedly extended despite non-performance, that's not a gray area. That's a breach of law. When a contractor is paid but equipment never arrives, the scandal isn't just theft. It's the approval chain. Someone signed off. Someone certified delivery. That's where the real story lives. At UHWI, if equipment is paid for and never delivered, that means multiple Jamaican institutions failed at once. Procurement committees, internal audit, the ministry, and the Auditor General's thresholds. That's not an accident. The Procurement Act requires evaluation committees, documentation, and clear justification for awards. If files are missing, decisions weren't documented, or timelines kept shifting, that's a compliance failure, and someone is legally responsible.
The UHWI misused its status to import $76 million worth of goods for 4 private companies, costing taxpayers $23.1 million in lost revenue. In one case, the hospital imported cups and dishes for a private company, then purchased those same items back for $6.9 million. In another, waste bins worth $6.6 million were imported for a private entity, saving them $3 million in duties. Then the UHWI turned around and bought the bins back for $11 million and covered the remaining import duties of nearly $1 million. Again, we have seen this pattern before. Remember that neurosurgical drill that was bought by the Southeast Regional Health Authority and brought in duty-free, saving the company millions of dollars in taxes, and later sold to the same Sarah for $31 million? Is there a common thread to all this, we must ask?
Patriotic comrades, let's look at delays as a tactic in public finance. Delay is one of the oldest corruption tools. You stall deliveries, prices inflate, emergency contracts kick in, and suddenly oversight disappears. Delay is not accidental, it's profitable. In Jamaica, emergency procurement has become a loophole, not a last resort. Once something is declared urgent, normal checks disappear, and that's where the same contractors keep reappearing. The act allows emergency procurement, but only under strict conditions. In Jamaica, emergencies have become permanent. When the same emergency keeps reoccurring year after year, that's not urgency, that's abuse. Patriotic comrades, this level of corruption deserves its own research project. Remember me telling you that. Now let's look at the UHWI as a case study. UHWI isn't unique, it's just visible. What you're seeing here is the same procurement pattern, repeated across the Ministry of Health. Same contractors, same excuses, same outcomes. Delay is strategic in Jamaican political contracts. You delay long enough, costs rise, timelines reset, and suddenly the breach becomes unavoidable. By then, the money is already gone. The FAA Act makes accounting officers personally responsible for how public funds are spent. That means money doesn't just disappear. Someone approved the payment. certified delivery, and authorized release.
The UHWI scandal is not isolated. It is a part of a systemic procurement crisis across the Ministry of Health and Wellness. In October 2025, the Integrity Commission released a damning report on the ministry's misuse of direct contracting, a procurement method meant only for contracts under $500,000 or in genuine emergencies. The Commission found that 15 contracts totaling $78.6 million were awarded using direct contracting in direct breach of the Ministry of Finance guidelines. The report also found that the minister created a perceived conflict of interest and that he appeared to advance private interests. While the Commission stopped short of calling it criminal, it described the conduct as ethically problematic.
Patriotic comrades, this is a systemic failure. What do I mean by that? Systems don't fail randomly. They fail in predictable ways that benefit specific people. When hospitals crumble, but contracts survive, you know exactly who the system is working for. UHWI is not the outlier, it's the window. These procurement patterns show up across the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Expired contracts, repeat extensions, and vendors who fail upward. Under the FAA Act, payment without proof of delivery is a serious breach. If contractors are paid while wards remain under-equipped, that's not mismanagement. It's a violation of financial control laws. Patriotic comrades, make we talk about political responsibility. This is where politics enters the room. Procurement rules are written by governments, enforced by ministers, and protected by silence. No one is accidentally in charge here. Let's be honest, permanent secretaries don't act in a vacuum. Ministers sign policy direction, approve exceptions, and sit in cabinet when these systems are defended. In Jamaica, permanent secretaries are the accounting officers under the FAA Act. They are legally accountable, not politically shielded. When failures repeat, the question is why consequences don't.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, the same pattern was seen. An Auditor General report found that the Ministry of Health and Wellness made payments totaling $337 million to 7 hotels for quarantine facilities, but yet they only had formal contracts with only one. The 6 providers without contracts received a total of $293 million. The ministry also paid $124 million to 8 suppliers for infrastructural works without any contracts in place and did not report this to the National Contracts Commission in the justification for using direct contracting. There were also regulatory breaches in the preparation of payment vouchers, with the Auditor General noting weaknesses in controls over the COVID-19 fixed asset acquisitions and an inability to confirm how $174 million transferred to other agencies was used. The absence of procurement documents to justify the $561 million spent at UHWI is a cause for concern, especially in light of overpricing and manipulation of the bidding process seen in the Ministry of Health. There was a $31 million neurosurgical drill purchased for the Bustamante Hospital for Children in 2025 that highlighted this practice. I then raised serious questions about the procurement process, alleging that the drill was overpriced and that bid manipulation had occurred. I also pointed out that comparable neurosurgical drills are available internationally for a fraction of the cost, between $3 million and $5 million. Yet SARA, the Southeast Regional Health Authority, approved a $31 million purchase as a result of the vendors breaking up the drill set and pricing each component, even the power cord, separately. Court documents filed by the supplier reveal that the Ministry of Health itself was the importer of the drill and that the procurement was facilitated through standard operating procedures. Yet Sarah, in its public statements, never disclosed the ministry's role in facilitating the import.
Patriotic comrades, make way look upon the lack of funds narrative now. Every time you hear there's no money, remember, money was allocated. The question is never if funds existed. The question is where they went and who approved their disappearance. So the no money excuses argument is no longer a legit talking point. No one in the Ministry of Health can say the money no exists. Every Jamaican has heard there's no money, but budgets were passed, allocations were made, and Parliament approved spending. So if wards are empty, the issue isn't funding, it's diversion, meaning the money is being diverted somewhere else or in some other pockets. So I could look on the Auditor General's reports. The Auditor General of Jamaica has repeatedly flagged issues like weak contracts management, missing documentation, and poor value for money in the health sector. These aren't surprises. They're warnings that were ignored and still continue to be ignored if we're being honest. Patriotic comrades, what we are witness here is just a continuation of a lack of accountability culture that exists in Jamaica. In Jamaica, accountability usually stops at a press release. Rarely does it reach prosecution, and systems behave exactly how consequences or the lack of them allow. When the Auditor General raises the same red flags year after year and nothing changes, that's not oversight, that's institutional indifference.
Despite the threats of lawsuits that I received that my allegations were false and defamatory, this procurement of the neurosurgical drill is currently being investigated by the Integrity Commission. This is the same minister who, after the Integrity Commission exposed the improper $80 million contracts, spoke about strengthening procurement practices. The same minister who assured the country that systems were sound, even as scandal after scandal emerged. So how does this really work? How do you award hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts with no documentation whatsoever? How do you bypass competitive bidding, misuse tax exemptions, and overpay for basic equipment, all while telling the public that everything is fine? Well, here's the playbook. 1. Sideline the clinicians. Keep the frontline doctors and consultants, nurses, and the end users out of the procurement decision-making process. That way, the needs list reflect management priorities, not patient care and staff priorities. If they are to be included, give them an option that is impossible to select when compared with the option that you want to be seen as chosen through a process that is above board. 2. Use retrospective procurement. Award contracts, receive goods, complete works, then hold a fake bidding process after the fact to create the appearance of compliance.
Patriotic comrades, let's look at who benefits when hospitals are under-equipped, but contractors stay wealthy. That's not mismanagement. That's a transfer of public funds away from patients and into private pockets. These reports go to Parliament and the Public Accounts Committee, PAC or PAC. So when Jamaicans ask who knew, the answer is simple. The system knew. The question is who chose not to act. In Jamaica, laws exist, reports exist, evidence exists. What's missing isn't information, it's enforcement. This is why nothing changes, because the procurement system doesn't collapse under corruption. It functions because of it. When procurement laws are ignored and financial controls are treated as suggestions, corruption doesn't hide. It operates in plain sight with paperwork. This isn't just mismanagement. It's a transfer of public money away from patients and into private hands with paperwork to make it legal.
3. Abuse emergency provisions. Use the direct contracting and single source methods for contracts that should go to competitive tender, citing urgency even when no genuine emergency exists. 4. Don't keep records. If there are no contracts, no evaluation reports, no procurement files, then auditors cannot prove anything was done improperly. 5. Protect the powerful. When scandals break, create a review committee to kill the story, issue vague statements about procedural improvements, and wait for the news cycle to move on. And 6. Splinter the contracts so they do not meet the threshold for further interrogation. This is how a ministry gets away with financial murder. This is not about one drill, one hospital, or one scandal. This is about a system designed and maintained to reward the connected and punish the honest. A system where $521 million can be spent without a single piece of documentation, where tax exemptions meant to protect the patients are used to enrich private companies, and where the minister responsible continues to insist that everything is irie and under control. In the next episode, we look at the people at the center of this system, the Manchester boys they call them, and how their leadership has created a culture where speaking up is dangerous and accountability is optional. I am Dr. Alfred Dawes, and this has been UC on Life Support.
Final thoughts. Patriotic comrades, what we've shown you across these episodes isn't a series of unfortunate events. It's a system working exactly as it was allowed to. UHWI didn't collapse overnight. It was starved, slowly, deliberately, and legally. Buildings decayed, staff were stretched past breaking point, equipment was approved, paid for, and never seen, and every step of the way, paperwork was signed to make failure look routine. The Public Procurement Act exists. The FAA Act exists. The Auditor General has spoken repeatedly. These are not secrets. These are formal warnings placed before Parliament. So now the responsibility shifts to Parliament. Debate is not enough. Auditor General findings must trigger consequences, not condolences. Oversight without enforcement is theater. To the Public Accounts Committee, your mandate is accountability. Call the accounting officers, demand the files, follow the money, and make non-compliance costly. To the media, stop treating procurement failures as isolated scandals. Track the contractors, track the extensions, track the payments. Corruption thrives when stories end too early. Yes, too much 90 wonder with mainstream media. Your favorite mainstream media TV and radio station lacks intuitive investigative journalism. They don't have no formal investigative journalism. They just report on sitting and they move on. That's why I don't watch or listen to mainstream media. And to citizens, this is your money, your hospital, your care. Ask your MPs what they did with the Auditor General's reports. Demand answers beyond press releases. Silence is what keeps the system alive, because systems don't change when they're exposed. They change when institutions are forced to act and when the public refuses to look away. This is not just a diagnosis, it's a demand.